Thank you, Sal. I appreciate that. And it's great to be here with you all today. It's nice to see some familiar faces out on the phone and virtual land, and have this opportunity to give you guys some of my experience and share some feedback. The title of this session is Hindsight's 2020, right? So we want to tell you about those things that maybe we wish we would have known, or that were particularly helpful to us. And so I'm just going to go through, each of the panelists will give about a 10 to 15 minute discussion. For me, I'm an architect. I usually start most introductions that way. I kind of joined the Navy with every intention of getting out of the Navy. So the fact that I ended up in for 25 years was a surprise to me, but I enjoyed every minute of it. And as I looked to transition, it was really a little bit of being overwhelmed with the options. But I knew one thing: I liked everything we did as military engineers, so that made it super easy, right? No, but it was really a matter of looking at, hey, I didn't really know. I mean, I knew there were some jobs that I liked better than others. Um, and so I really wanted to pursue those. One was being a public works officer for a large base, being in charge of the installation for the boss, which I thought lent itself to higher ed, but also doing a lot with some of the tours with NAVFAC and doing design and construction and AE and construction work that I really liked that too. And I had some good mentors that I was able to reach out in both areas. And that was one of the things that I started doing right away, even um, before I made the decision to say, hey, I'm going to retire, was starting to do that collaboration and get that perspective from folks, military, civilian, folks that were not a career in military, but a career in the AE industry. And probably one of the things I learned there is that I underestimated how much time that would take to just coordinate and talk with folks that had been former bosses, colleagues, friends, but it was really valuable because everybody had a little bit of a different perspective, and talking with folks who were working, selling work and all of these different terms that I didn't understand what the seller doer was and all of that, and having them explain that to me, and trying to balance, what would higher ed look like if I went that way. So I was really going down a concurrent path of a higher ed type of a job where I must have filed probably 10 or 12 different applications with different universities and colleges around the country. We had sort of narrowed our focus on, sort of the central part of the U.S., but had looked as far as Boston and just kind of played that out at the same time that I was doing interviews with maybe 3 different AE firms, trying to decide which way to go with that. And I had a little bit of the perspective that, nothing was solid until you had an offer. And so I had to run a few things all the way through to the core. Some of the applications I filed I never heard back from at all, and others, just it took time to develop, and it was confusing and different, as Sal alluded to in his opening remarks. Is you're in a position where you can actually negotiate, and and that was different for me. I was used to being told what to do by the detailer, and so it never occurred to me that I had options, and that, on the private sector, one of my observations was it appeared to be um, less strict. I mean, I had a couple people say, you tell me when you're ready and we'll make you an offer, kind of thing. And so that put the pressure on me that I hadn't expected, to know that, okay. And so it really kind of came back to that first point. I really had to decide what I wanted to do. And so when I was able to get through the interview process at University of Texas, which was also very extensive, and that was a big difference, was through the higher ed side, there was so many, just as you might expect in a bureaucracy, so much more layers of people that it had to talk to with interviews. And so it was just interview overload in a lot of ways. And one of the things I learned is to try to talk to the camera. I wasn't used to being in the virtual world that everybody else was as well. So hopefully I'm, learning that a little bit more, but being patient through that process and weighing it out. And I tell you one thing that helped me by by going down, and I was truly torn between whether to work for an AEC type of company or to work for higher ed, but to have an idea, practically speaking, what I would get paid, and some of those numbers that Sal showed that ended up being there. But so I knew that when I got the offer from University of Texas, whether or not it was a good offer and kind of what all of that meant, and the finances that went into it with living in the state of Texas and or the state of California. People in the AE were more interested in the connections that I had with the Navy in San Diego, and so we had to really decide: do we want to stay in San Diego, or do we want to move closer to family? And the tax benefits that go with either location, or not benefits, depending. And so we had to wade through all of that, a lot of discernment, that went on, and it was tough. It was a really tough decision, but I think we're happy here working at UT. It's a great mission. That was one of the things that everything I thought higher ed would be, it is. It's maybe a little bit better than what I thought. I had been told by people that be maybe a certain way that it hasn't worked out to be. It's very familiar to working for the Navy. As I went through the process, and I think Sal talked about this in his opening remarks as well too, is that